you, Mr. Chairman. So in 1972, Congress established the Social Security Income, or SSI, so that people with disabilities could live in dignity and be somewhat self-supporting by getting a monthly cash payment. And it's now a critical lifeline for about 8 million Americans. But the problem is that these outdated rules have stranded about 4 out of every 10 people who receive it in poverty and unable to work. So I want to walk through an example just to make sure we're in on the numbers. A young woman living with disability who receives the average SSI payment, which is about $698 a month last year, well below the poverty line. So she picks up a remote minimum wage graphic design job for 8 hours a week, allowing her to take home another $232 a month, still leaving her well below the poverty line. Ms. Wilschke, you're an associate commissioner at the Social Security Administration. Say that SSA sees that this woman is earning $232 from her job each month on top of her SSI benefits. Under current law, can she keep the $232?
Thank you for the question. She would keep part of it, but it would be, her benefit would be reduced.
How much?
It's 80, she can keep the first $85 and half of the rest.
So she gets $85 is the amount she can keep from her work. And after that, for every $2 she earns, what happens to her Social Security benefits?
It would go down by $1.
They go down by $1. You know, and then it gets worse. We've talked about another part of this, Cliff. Say she works for a few hours each week. She manages to put a little money aside. She wants to put down a deposit to try to get an apartment. And between her savings and SSI and her job, she manages to save just a little over $2,000. Now, when SSA sees that she has over $2,000, just walk us through. What happens, Ms. Wilschke?
Generally speaking, if she has liquid resources above the asset limit, she would not be eligible, at least for that month.
So she loses all of her benefits.
Correct.
At that point. So she's done at that point.
Yes.
So SSI rules mean that this young woman can't afford to save for an apartment. She can't take a part-time job without jeopardizing her benefits. And having to continuously toe the monetary line here in order to keep her existing payments, I think is a minefield, as Senator Whitehouse has just pointed out, especially for an individual with a disability. So it's not just hard for SSI recipients, which we've been talking about. I want to talk about what it does for SSA. Associate Commissioner Wilschke, how does the complexity of SSI's eligibility rules impact the Social Security Administration and your administrative costs?
Thank you for the question. Yes, SSI is complex for us to administer, and so while SSI payments only make up about 4 or 5% of our benefit outlays, it does make up about 1/3 of our administrative budget.
So you're spending 1/3 of your budget to track down people who now have $2,010 in total assets or who have made $100 more than the $85 that they were entitled to earn without triggering this. You know, SSI is supposed to keep Americans with disabilities out of poverty, but it offers below poverty level support. It punishes people for working, and it punishes recipients for savings, all while the Social Security Administration is spending big dollars in order to administer this system. So I think we've all been talking about the importance of making changes here. I'm working with Senator Brown and others on this committee to pass the SSI Restoration Act, which would raise the benefit rate and help fix these outdated rules. I'm glad to see that there's bipartisan support for raising the asset limits so that SSI beneficiaries can save more than a few pennies without fear of losing their benefits, and so that the Social Security Administration can just spend less time administering all of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.